Are you lost in the chaotic whirlwind of day-to-day busyness? Do you yearn for a deeper sense of meaning and purpose in your life? Welcome to Be You, Your Story, Your Purpose, the podcast dedicated to empowering women on their journey of self-discovery and finding their true purpose through their own story. I'm your host, Brenda Simmons. Welcome to the Be You, Your Story, Your Purpose podcast. Today, I want to start out by sharing with you a story about David Beckham. And I got this story off of the Netflix documentary about him. It is really, really good, and I highly recommend it. And honestly, everything that I know about David Beckham, I learned from there. So if that's wrong, then I'm wrong. But hopefully it's all true because he's the one who actually shared these stories. So the first story that I want to share with you is when he was playing for the Real Madrid soccer team. And at one point, and this soccer team actually gathered players from all over the world. And it didn't matter what language they spoke. They were just the best in their area with what they did. And so they were recruited for this team. And so it really was the most elite soccer team in the entire world. And at one point, the soccer coach benched David Beckham, and he was ticked off. He was really angry about it. And little did he know, though, that across the world in California, there was a soccer coach who was watching the game and was like, oh my gosh, David Beckham is benched. What is going on? I wonder if he would be willing to talk with me and just see if he would be willing to come and play with my team. It was the LA Galaxies. So he actually flew over there after watching that one game, and he flew over to Madrid and said, hey, David, you want to come and just have lunch with me? That's all it is. I just want to have lunch with you. And so David Beckham said, yeah, I would. And so he just had lunch with this coach. This coach said, invited him to come and play. But at the time he was like, well, I'm here, and I'm not really looking to go anywhere else. Well, the coach for the Real Madrid team caught wind of what happened and told David Beckham, you will never play for us again at all, ever. And in fact, in the practices, he wasn't even allowed to play with the team. He had to practice on his own. What was interesting, though, is he showed up for every single practice on time, dressed, ready to go. And he gave a full workout, a full practice every single day, even though he was not allowed to practice with the team. And the team was finally just begged the coach, like, please just let him come and play with us. He's already here. He's, please, we need him. And the coach, they interviewed the coach about this, and he said, I was really surprised because not once did he complain. He was always there. He was on time. He did his work. And I was really surprised that he was so calm and collected and just did his job. And so fast forward, David Beckham does move over to the LA Galaxy. And I actually had a chance to watch him play. He was playing the Kansas City Wizards, and I got to go to that game. It was really fun. But again, I didn't know anything about him at the time. So he's playing with the LA Galaxy. And there was another soccer player on this team who, and wherever David Beckham went, he was like a huge celebrity, not just a good soccer player, but he just was super famous. And so because of that, he brought with him a lot of paparazzi, a lot of attention. And so when he got to the United States and he saw at what level that they were playing in, you could just see it on his face. He didn't say a whole lot about it, but you could tell that he was like, this is not on par with what I'm used to. And as I was watching, I thought, this would be kind of like Michael Jordan going over and playing for a European basketball team. Like that's the level of how it was. So, anyway, so there's this other soccer player on the LA Galaxy, and he came out publicly and said how unprofessional David Beckham was and how, he knocked them for not being as good as the European teams and on and on. And David Beckham was really hurt by that. And in this interview on the documentary, he said, "Man, I've never been called out for my professionalism. I have always been professional and always done my best." And so there's this rift between the two. And so the coach gathered them in a meeting and said, "Hey, we've got to fix this because it's hurting our team." And so this other soccer player apologized and said, "I never should have gone public with my own opinions. That was wrong of me to do." And David Beckham said, "All right, that's great." Shook his hand and they went on. And this soccer player was interviewed and he said, he never retaliated. He never complained. He just, again, showed up and did his job and forgave me easily. And so, especially with these two stories, I really was just so impressed with the character of David Beckham, especially the fact that he was faced with these difficult situations, and these weren't the only ones. There were several others, but he did it without complaining. And he may have done it in his own time, but he never publicly complained. And even when society expected that to happen, and we see that all the time with celebrities, but that also happens all the time with ourselves. How many times is the weather bad? And that's something that people complain about all the time. "Oh, I can't believe the weather's like this," right? So constant. So I think, so this is what I want to talk to you about today, is about complaining and how it just is time to stop complaining. So let's first define what is complaining, because I think there is an important distinction between bringing up something that is a problem that needs to be fixed versus an actual complaint. So let's say you're at a restaurant and the service is just bad, right? And so you go up to the manager and say, "Hey, I think this was a problem. It could really be fixed," right? And of course, there are ways to do that are polite and kind rather than being rude and snarky. So stating a factual problem so that with the purpose of it being fixed is not a complaint. Okay. What is a complaint is repeating something negative to get attention. Because if you really think about it, we complain to get attention. Now, even if it's just about the weather, it's, "Look at me, I want to say something," right? So the problem, though, because it comes up when you've got long-term complaining. This is when you are bringing up problems on a continual basis, and it starts to become very damaging. So let's talk about that damage. There are physical effects and there are mental effects. So let's talk physical. So studies have shown that continual complaining will actually shrink your hippocampus. Now, your hippocampus is a little tiny part of your brain, right in the center of your brain. It looks like it's kind of in the shape of a seahorse. That's where it gets its name. And it's part of the limbic system. The limbic system helps to regulate your emotions. And the hippocampus job within that limbic system is it's thought to store long-term memory and to make those memories resistant to be forgotten. So this shrinking of the hippocampus actually then reduces your ability to store memories and for correct memory recall. So that's one effect of long-term complaining. Another one is that it will increase your levels of cortisol. So cortisol is your stress hormone, and your stress hormone, if you've got elevated levels of cortisol, then you have an increased risk for heart disease, stroke, diabetes, just a host of other health problems. So in essence, if you are continually complaining all the time, there are some very, very real physical consequences of that. And ultimately, you are rewiring your brain for negativity, which makes those effects more pronounced on a consistent basis. So those are some physical consequences of continual complaining. Now, mentally, there's some problems there too. So, and this creates a chain reaction with a negative cycle. So, first thing that it does, it puts you in a victim mindset. And when you're in a victim mindset, we've talked about this, it's you're basically giving up your power to deal with difficult situations and change if needed, right? You are saying, I have nothing to do with this, and the only power that I have is to complain about it, right? And what that then does is it can lead to a depression and a host of other psychological problems. It lowers your emotional vibration, and also it affects the people around you. Have you ever walked into a room and there's a person in there and that person complains all the time and you're just like, oh, I just can't deal with that. I can't deal with that energy. Like, we've all experienced it. We've all been that person at times. But the problem becomes if that is always happening, then that can affect people around you. So when you send out that low vibration into the world, an interesting thing happens. That vibration is going to go out of you and it's going to go all the way around the world, and it's going to gather speed and strength as it comes, and it's going to come back to you. And so it's kind of like a karma, but just know that it will come back to you stronger than what you put out there. So in essence, what happens with that is it's going to lower the number of positive opportunities that you have, because remember, that which you focus on grows. So if you're focusing on complaining and negative things happening to you, those things are going to grow, right? Because remember, it's going all the way around the world and it's coming back and it's going to be more powerful. So, everybody complains though, right? I gotten caught up in complaining, and I have been that consistently complaining person before. And it's an interesting place to be because it's become such a habit that it almost seems unnatural to not complain. But as I've just shown you, there are some very, very real physical and mental consequences to continually complaining. So how do you stop doing it? Well, I'm going to share with you 3 different methods that you can use. And with each method, I'm going to give you a resource that you can learn a little bit more about it. So the first one is to become aware. Because habits, sometimes we get in the habit of doing something and we don't even see it, and so it is really important to be very, very aware. Well, how can we do that? There's a guy, his name is Will Bowen. He wrote a book called A Complaint-Free World. And in this book, he talks about a 21-day no complaining challenge. And so what he does is he gets a bracelet, and he started this himself, and then he wrote about it. And so he said, I put this bracelet on, and every time I would complain, I would switch it to the other hand, and then I would start over. And so let's say you made it 2 days without complaining, and then you did it on the 3rd day, you'd have to switch it over and start that over again. And what this does is it gives you a physical reminder. And so I have actually done this. So I've got a bracelet here that I'm wearing, and I really like this bracelet because I made it myself, and it's got colors that I really like, and I like it because it's flat. A lot of times I don't even know that it's there, and I really like that. But it is an interesting thing. When I first started doing it, I had to change it several times a day. And this was only like 2 months ago. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm not that much of a complainer. I was surprised, really surprised at how much I do complain. And so but I noticed the first day I did it, I had to switch it like 8 times, right? And then pretty soon I can make it through a whole day. And then I can make it through 2 days, and that span of time becomes longer and longer. And it was really exciting to me, like, oh my gosh, I'm totally doing a great job with this. This is so amazing. I did have to change it yesterday. I had to change it I said a complaint, and I was like, nope, I've got to be honest with myself and change that so that, and start over. So, but here's what I've noticed as I have done this. Number one, I've noticed how often I complain. And that has, like I said, it was really surprising at how much negativity that I allow myself to have. Then you notice also, what is it that you're complaining about, right? And so Is it really, inconsequential things like the weather, or is it, and sometimes it is, or is it like bigger things? And so I think that's important to know what you're complaining about, because if you don't know what you're complaining about, then it's hard to really address those things if you don't identify them, right? So then also, I think it's important to notice when you do it, what are the circumstances around it? So here's something I found. I complain more when I'm really tired. And I was going through, especially time I wasn't sleeping very well. And I think that's why I was complaining so much, because I just mentally and physically was having a hard time dealing with life in general. So understanding that really, really helped. And so I really focused, and I noticed, okay, I'm just tired. That this is why I'm having such a hard time and I'm complaining all the time. So I really focused on just getting some more sleep. And then I found, oh my gosh, it was so much easier to be positive and to refrain from complaining, just because I had the sleep that I needed. So having that 21-day challenge I honestly haven't made it to 21, but it is my goal to make it. So it's a really, really good exercise. So number one is to be aware and do your 21-day challenge. Number two is to debunk or invalidate what you're complaining about. So many times we complain about things that they're inconsequential. Remember, I said like silly things like the weather, or sometimes they're not even true. And so it's important to validate or invalidate, debunk what we are complaining about. So this really gives us a different perspective and a new frame around what we are experiencing. So Byron Katie, she wrote a book a long time ago called Loving What Is. And in that book, she talks about the work. And the work is just a series of 4 questions that you can ask yourself anytime you have a negative thought. It's not just, she uses not just for complaining, right? But I think this is very, very applicable to when we take those negative thoughts to a complaint. So the first question that she asks is it true? Is what you're complaining about actually true, right? Can you absolutely know that it's true? That's the second question. Can you absolutely know that it's true? In other words, do we just think it's true, or are we assuming it's true, right? The third question is, how do you react when you believe that thought, right? So that's, you're looking at what's the bigger picture around this complaint. And then the last one is, who would you be without the thought? So again, what is that thought doing to you? And if you didn't have that thought or that complaint, what would happen? What would you replace it with? Right? And so I love especially those last 2 questions, because in the framework of complaining, because it really helps you to go, okay, is this really necessary? Like, what's the bigger picture? What are the consequences of me complaining the way that I'm doing that? So I suggest looking into Byron Katie. She has great work, and doing that work, asking those 4 questions to see where you're at with your complaints. Okay, so that's the second one, to debunk or invalidate what you're complaining about. And then number 3 is to replace complaining with gratitude. And I love, love, love this one. So I've been listening to the book, The Gap and the Gain by Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy. And I highly recommend this book. It's super awesome. But at one point in this book, they say, okay, if you're struggling with complaining, what if whatever you complain about goes away? It disappears. So if you are complaining about how your shoes, I'm just throwing this out, how you don't like the way your shoes look or feel, right? Well, poof, they're gone. How would that be? Oh, I hate how flaky my fingernails are. Poof, no more fingernails. I hate my hair. Poof, no hair. Right? It goes on and on. Like, there's so many things that we could complain about, right? If you really think about, okay, what if this was gone? What if I didn't have this in my life anymore? What would that be like? So in my own studies, I have learned that if you have a negative statement, something that you're telling yourself or that you're saying all the time, it takes two positive thoughts to counteract that negative thought. So here's something that you can do. Let's say your complaint is, I hate it that nobody helps me to clean the house. Well, you replace that with a two positive statement, right? So I am grateful because, right? I'm grateful for whatever. That's your first positive statement, because that's your second positive statement. So, for example, in this complaint of, I hate it that nobody helps me clean the house, you could replace it with, I remember thinking, okay, if I complained about it, what if it was gone, right? So I'm grateful I have a house to live in because it is a gathering place for my family. So here's another one. Let's say your complaint is, I'm so tired of the way my body looks. Replace that with, I'm grateful for my body because it brings deep meaning to my human experience through sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch. You see what a difference that is? And it's really important to replace that complaint, really be proactive, because we get so used to complaining and having these negative thoughts that we've got to be proactive in removing them and replacing them with positive things. So nature abhors a vacuum. So if it's not enough to just not say it, because your brain's going to automatically go there again. And so you have to retrain your brain. So try these tricks. The third one again was to replace complaining with gratitude. So these are really, really great methods, great tricks that you can use to help put yourself in a better frame of mind. And remember that everything that you focus on will grow. So if you are focusing on positivity, that is going to grow around you. And I've been doing this, really focusing on this for the last couple of months, and I have actually noticed an energetic change in my body. There is a lightness, there is I don't know, there's just a happiness and a joy that I'm feeling a little bit extra. So it's a really, really good thing. So I hope you enjoyed that. Remember, get aware, do your 21-day challenge, reframe the complaint, see if it's true, what is it doing to you and those around you, and then replace complaining with gratitude. And I hope you find some value and some use in these steps. And just remember, your purpose is in your story. You got this. I hope you press like, follow me. It really helps me out. And I will see you next time. Take care.
Celebrate your dreams, let them take flight, for you are a star, shining bright in every step you take. Let your light glow, being you is the greatest way to grow.